That's right. So this is one of those meetings that you were attending. For shelter.
Yeah.
Worst place to have a meeting. It's just lovely. I like the lobby here. So when you come in, you see the water is just small.
Thank you.
We've been fortunate too. Both times that we've been to Gibson this month, the weather has been very, very nice. No rain, no clouds.
Oh. Annie, it says 3:30 on my phone.
Oh no. Already?
30 seconds, but yeah.
Oh no. How many years warranty do you have on this? At least 2 months.
Seeing as it's 3:30, it even says it up there on the clock. I am calling this regular meeting of Town of Gibsons Council. Calling this regular meeting of Town of Gibsons Council to order on January 21st, 2025 at 3:30 p.m. And we're honored to be gathered here on the traditional territories of the Squamish Nation. We need to approve the agenda first. Moved by Councillor DeAndrade, seconded by Councillor Kroll. All those in favor? The motion carries. And our first item of business is a delegation from Gaetan Royer from the Sunshine Coast Chamber of Commerce.
So I'm told I'm going to have to say next slide. That's going to be something
Okay,
I'm going to have
just
to
turn
say.
your microphone on. Perfect, okay.
Happy New Year, everybody, Mayor and Council. I'm here to represent the Sunshine Coast Chamber of Commerce. We had our 1-year anniversary just last week. That was the time of registration of the Chamber of Commerce. But really, the actual official date was the AGM, which was in June. So we have about 7 months under our belt. I'd like to, next slide. We have recognized the 3 former chambers and all the volunteers that have worked with that. It was about time that we formed this Sunshine Coast Chamber of Commerce. The URL had been bought back in 2018, and it took us until 2024 to actually activate it. Next slide. Local businesses are really reliant on government services to basically help by providing competent infrastructure, the roads, the water, the sewer systems. That's very much part of what we rely on. Transportation services to support tourism and getting goods out here. And we also rely on governments to have a helpful attitude when a business wants to expand, that they get support, that if something is slightly against the bylaws, that instead of saying no, there's solutions being presented. We're going to work with you to make that happen. And I have to applaud the staff of the town of Gibsons here under the leadership of your CAO. You have a great group of people who are really helpful and wearing a different hat from a business perspective. I can attest to many occasions when that happened. And basically, creating an economic development climate is part of the role. If you look at the community charter, it does refer to supporting the economy as one of the mandates of communities. Next slide. We came up with, quite early on, with a strategic plan. It is, next slide. It is an ambitious plan with a lot of goals in various areas. I'm proud to say that we've got quite a few items on this list that have been checked out and done and completed. And we're turning our attention to some of the longer term goals and the things that are a little bit more challenging than just getting organized and getting going as a young organization. Next slide. We come here today with 4 requests. Next slide. The first one is to ask, we're asking local governments, and that's in this case Sechelt and the town of Gibsons, to assist us in some way. It's up to us to get membership, but if we can get access to some of the new businesses that come to town, they come here to sign up for a new business license. If they and you can't provide us with private information just without getting the okay from businesses, and we understand that, but if there could be an opt-in or opt-out that when they fill in the information for their business license, that this information be conveyed to the chamber, that would be helpful. We had collectively, the 3 chambers before had about 250 members. We now have 370 members that are signed up and fully members of the Chamber of Commerce. So we've grown already, but we want to reach as many people in the community as possible. Next slide. There's a number of things that we've inherited from Scredo in the past year. Some of them were visible and well planned for. One of them, the existence of a database, which is the system called Growth Zone that had been put in place by Scredo, ended up with nobody to take over paying the monthly bill. We would like to request that the 3 local governments help us with that amount. And we already selected a different system that's going to be less costly and providing more flexible information to us and a more flexible scheduling of events and things like that to communicate with the membership. But the database that was put together, which had all the contributions from the 3 former chambers, but also the names of businesses and data from businesses that Scredo had collected, we'd like that to survive, and we'd like your assistance in that regard. So a fraction of this 6,500 is our request to the town of Gibsons. Next slide. The next one is something that I'd like to say more if there are questions, but I'll limit my thoughts to this. We have successfully, I've been involved in successful insert the name of the town or the name of the community, invest in the Sunshine Coast forums. There's a kind of a recipe that exists on doing that, and it's provided excellent results for other communities. What we'd like to do is, rather than write our own and do this unilaterally, we'd like to engage with the 3 local governments, with other groups. We've already talked to Sunshine Coast Tourism and have their commitment to help us, and then other groups as well. So this forum, as I said, I can provide a little bit more meat if you wish, but it is essentially attracting people to the area to come here, investors, financial people in the film industry, representing various sectors of the economy, tourism infrastructure, attracting them to the area, presenting them with basically a concerted effort by the community to present what is being done in the community and what opportunities exist. And out of that, you then leave these folks to follow up, and you help them in their follow-up to connect with those opportunities and invest in the Sunshine Coast. So that's it in a nutshell. As I said, it's there's quite a bit more to share in that regard, and we'd really appreciate the support by either a member of council or a member of the administration to join us in this effort to plan and invest in Sunshine Coast Forum to be held in the fall of 2025. Next slide. Lastly, we're here playing our advocacy role. We'd like to make sure that the communities take every advantage of every possible solution, initiatives to collaborate. We have one example, which is that I'm going to share, which is the community housing needs assessments. The first one was done collectively by the three communities, providing support to organize that collection of data and coming up with I believe it was 2022 that the first housing needs assessment was put together. In 2023, it was assembled by the Sunshine Coast Affordable Housing Society, and Scredo were participating, in other community groups, and the three communities participated as well in an update of the housing needs assessment. In 2024, it became an individual effort by each community. So Seychelles did its own housing needs assessment. Gibsons did its own, utilizing the same consultant, and SCRD did its own housing needs assessment, utilizing KPMG as their consultant. So what used to be one invoice for one report became 3 invoices for 3 reports, with a lot of duplication and some confusing information when the numbers don't match in the different communities. So this is one example that we bring up where collaboration would have led to better results for all the organizations that use these housing needs assessment, like the nonprofits and the government, when they assess. They want to assess the success of an investment in the community, as well as the private sector. So we encourage you to look at the various initiatives and see how the 3 communities could save money to the taxpayers by working together. Next slide. And in closing, we'd like to thank Councillor D'Andrade for her contribution. She's been attending quite a few of our board meetings, and we're always wanting to keep the communications lines open between the Sunshine Coast Chamber of Commerce and the communities. We want to hear from you on an ongoing basis, and we want to work with our communities. So that's it. I thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you. Are there questions from members of council? Councillor D'Andrade.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, it's just to elaborate on the delegation, and the letter here talk about the importance, right, of this invest, and also that in other communities, similar initiatives resulted in significant investments, more welcoming attitudes, and years of positive impact on the local economy. So I wonder if the chamber could expand on, give examples of communities that had the benefit and what kind of investments were done in such communities.
Yeah. The first experience, the first exposure I had was in the city of Surrey, had to do with the Wally development and attracting investors to the Wally area. Wally used to be, similar to downtown East Side, and now it's been the place where there's been a lot of investment, a new library, a new the SFU campus, and then a lot of private investment as well. The Whitehorse Yukon did one as well. Port Moody back in 2001, I believe. And other communities, Peachland in the Okanagan, and so there's many examples. And just to give you a flavor of what this would be, an agenda inspired by other communities. So an inspirational keynote speaker. Municipal leaders would be invited to introduce their community, present opportunities for potential public-private partnerships on municipal land, explain how the community is investing in itself. Investors from outside want to know that the community is investing in itself. They want to know that they're investing in a place that's growing. So something like the money coming to help resolve the water, that's a big investment that's going to answer questions of, is there going to be water for my development or for my new tourism infrastructure that I want to bring in? And it's also going to say, well, geez, this community has got all this federal money coming to it. There's going to be more economic activity. The province and the federal, so MLA and MP would be invited to talk about the region, how they support it, and the kinds of investment support programs that are available for things like food security or tourism or every sector of the economy. Community groups would be invited. Habitat for Humanity, for example, Habitat has got a number of projects, and they have some pieces of land as well. They could seek partners who are coming to hear this, participate in this forum, and then private landowners would offer private lands that they have that could be potentially redeveloped or developed. And then the logistics of that, it's a full day. You've got to host these people, you have to organize tour, and a very important follow-up after. So in one day, if you spend a few months before and a few months after, that one day is going to result in potentially millions of dollars being invested in the Sunshine Coast. That's how you create economic development.
Thank you. Councillor Kroll.
Thank you, Mayor White, and thank you, Gitan, for the presentation. First of all, I can only applaud the fact that the chambers have merged into one entity. And certainly in your presentation today, I appreciate the fact of what you've been able to salvage out of Scredo. And, in your presentation today, I think we learned more of what was going on behind the scenes in Scredo than we did in the many years that we were engaged with Scredo. So I certainly applaud the direction you're taking the chamber and look forward to working with you.
Thank you. Councillor Thompson.
Thank you for that presentation. I don't know if it applies directly to the forum, and if there's an opportunity for it to be included. I'm sure you've got all your details lined up for that event. But when we had our community dialogue session that took place early January in Heritage Hall, there was interest in mentorship programs for young entrepreneurs. And I'm wondering what the appetite is for that, and if there's an opportunity to not just encourage, but make some connections on that front.
Yeah, well, I think Town of Gibsons is playing a leadership role. You're one of I attend a lot of council meetings, and having a youth representative is extraordinary. I remember what was said that one of the projects that I presented by the youth representative was, it just floored me. So there's many examples. We're connected to other chambers across the region. like Tri-Cities Chamber, I'm very familiar with. I'm a member of the Williams Lake Chamber, so there's youth programs that exist. Youth leadership support program, entrepreneurship program where you create a business for a day. And you basically have mentors who help youth who are interested to work with them, create a business, have sales one day, maybe at the market or something like that, and then they have an experience that they bring with them for a lifetime. So there's many different things. I said we're a young chamber, we're a young group. We have only so many volunteers, so these things may take a little bit more time. In our strategic plan, there is direction to organize activities and to have these kinds of programs available. We're going to get there. Yeah.
Thank you. And yeah, regarding the requests, we do have a policy to not immediately respond to requests at the same meeting. So we will be looking at those in the future, including in the budget process.
Really appreciate the opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you. Adoption of minutes. We've got some minutes on our agenda from special council meeting December 10th, 2024 to be adopted. Moved by Councillor Kroll, seconded by Councillor DeAndrade. All those in favor? The motion carries. And as for committee reports, we have two sets of minutes here from the advisory design panel. So there are a couple of recommendations too from one of them. But additionally, I think in kind of a new process for just clarity for our development process, we've talked about going over these minutes to review recommendations. And I know Councillor DeAndrade is usually quite active in doing that. So I don't have that in front of me at the moment, but if anyone wants to comment on the recommendations, I'll get it here. Yeah, I've just been going off this, which doesn't have the recommendations for that part. Does anyone want to comment on the recommendations? Just to kind of, I think we need to review them and kind of figure out what is something that's just feedback that the developer can consider. What is something that we really agree with as a council that might need to be something that we pass a motion on, or what's something we might disagree with, which is quite important to delineate that early on. So I'll go to Councillor DeAndrade. So, and then we're looking at the minutes of December 4th, 2024.
Thank you, Mayor. I think, first of all, I would like to have if we are making a recommendation, it would be nice to have the project in context. So, I mean, it has been a while ago. I kind of remember, but, to go to the details. So, I mean, we can receive this from information and then the next report.
Just ask it to go to the next. Yeah, it was supposed to come, but then there was a hang up. So
I also have
minutes, but not the project.
I also have a request, if it's possible. I noticed when I was reading the minutes, it took me, I had to go to the second page to realize who was this project about. So it would be nice to have at the front, the top, the project reference. So I had to go to the second page.
Okay. Yeah, staff will take that back. Yeah, it's just an oversight. So yeah, we'll bring these back to when first reading comes.
Yeah.
And then in the 5.2, January 15th, there are two recommendations that are coming straight to council from the ADP. The first one, it isn't really clear if it's something, but it just helps if about the ADP, just an internal process, whether kind of we have authority over that or they do, but it just helps for us to endorse it anyway. So I'll look for a motion for both of those recommendations. Councillor Kroll, seconded by Councillor Thompson. All those in favor? The motion carries. Any questions on, final questions on the ADP minutes? We'll go to administration reports. The chief building official is here for placement of community charter, section 57, notice on title for 346 Headlands Road. Oh, Jason.
Yeah, it's, all the information's in the report. If anybody's got any questions, I can.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, and we typically give opportunity. Now, when should I? Quite often we'll have. Now we have the report that's written. I'm going to give councillors an opportunity to ask questions to our staff about the report, and then I'll give you a chance to speak, and we can potentially ask you questions as well. So, are there questions about the report on 346 Headlands Road to start? I mean, we might have more questions after Casey has a chance to speak here. Could you come up and respond?
It's Casey, please.
Yeah.
Lorraine's husband.
And could you turn that, press that button so it just goes online? Great, thanks. Hi, Casey.
My name's Casey. I'm Lorraine's husband, and she couldn't make it today, so we were given notice that you were going to give us notice on title, so I'm just here to see what the process is and maybe ask a few questions. Is there a report that's supposed to be presented, or am I just?
Yeah, maybe I'll ask.
Question-
Yeah, I'm
ask
sorry. I
questions
think
here
it helps that maybe you get a summary of it anyway. So I'll
Well,
ask Jason
I
to
kinda know
summarize
what's
it.
been
Yeah,
going on,
yeah.
so-
And I think you know the situation, but
yeah.
let's do that. Let's just, if you could summarize it, Jason, that'd be helpful, because we all have access to a written report, but we can.
Well, I mean, Jason and I and Lorraine have been corresponding for quite a while, so we kind of really know what's going on here. But one thing I was wondering, I mean, this is regarding the notice on title due to the carriage house that's wasn't built with the proper permits apparently, and we were not given any notice when we purchased the residence. So, and I spoke with David about it, and he said, well, you should go after the realtors. But I mean, what do you go after them for? Shouldn't whoever owned the house at this time when the structure was built been given notice that it wasn't compliant, and that they should have been given notice on title? Like, I don't really know what we would go after them for, the realtors, because now you guys are placing the notice on title. So what we've been presented with to make it compliant, if it's possible, it just seems quite unreasonable. I mean, there are things in there such as doing a survey, having engineers look at it, paying thousands of dollars to join the infrastructure. There was a tenant in there when we purchased the place, and and Lorraine came to here and asked somebody, is this legal to have somebody in there? And she was told yes. I'm not sure who told her, probably just somebody in administration that didn't know what they were really talking about. So I realized that there need to be changes to the building to make it compliant. But I'm just thinking that some of them are unreasonable, and it seems a bit like a cash grab to me, like joining the infrastructure. It's already has sewage and water running to. There's been tenants in there since we bought the place. So I just think there should be, I was hoping originally that it could be grandfathered, because I'd like to know when the bylaws were changed, the bylaws that made it non-compliant. And because it was built, I think, in 2002, and we didn't purchase the place till 2017. So, and also, when we are able to, because I mean, looks like it's gonna cost tens of thousands of dollars to change this building to make it compliant. If there may be some concessions, such as joining the infrastructure, or do we have to follow everything that you outlined in your recommendations? And thank you, Jason, you've been very kind and helpful to us, but I guess that's what I'm asking, is if are there any concessions that can be made? And also, is there such a thing as grandfathering anymore? Because the research I've shown that shows me that if the bylaws are changed after the building has been built and there are tenants in it, that it can be grandfathered.
Well, that's a good question. Just is this an issue of where the bylaw was changed after the work was done?
We haven't done any work to the building
Okay.
other than cosmetic.
Yeah, I understand that. So, but is this an issue where
Yeah.
the bylaws were changed after that?
Yeah, so I can summarize a little bit. As Casey said, the building was built in 2002. After a stop work was placed, it was being built without a permit, but that was before their ownership. And a variance was approved to reduce the rear setback, but as an accessory building, not a dwelling. So a permit was eventually issued as a storage shed / playroom. There actually wasn't really any proper final occupancy. No one was there at the time of the final inspection, so the inspector at the time didn't actually have access to it. I'm not sure how that ended, but unfortunately, when they purchased, so when Casey and Lorraine purchased the property, the realtor, whoever, didn't advise that it wasn't a dwelling, even if someone was living in it.
Under the impression, they told us, I mean, it's a mortgage helper, there's a tenant in there. So
Yeah.
he was in there for months after we purchased the place still, so it was a complete surprise to us that it was non-compliant all of a sudden, so.
And there's
I thought that was mainly because of the lane setback.
Let's let our building official finish his answer to the question first.
Yeah.
And that, that's a common situation that we come across. Unauthorized buildings being used for dwellings is nothing we haven't heard of before. I suppose the issue of this one is it's being used as an RGA as well. And that's how it's come to our attention, is through the work we do to look for these and request business licenses, but we can't give a business license for a building that doesn't meet the code for a dwelling. And as far as, exemptions and things like that, there could be a few building related exemptions, like PC housing may not apply if the building is older than 10 years. So that's something that can be considered. The issues we see, though, is to approve it as a dwelling, which was never built as a dwelling, to meet the 2024 code. It would be difficult. The insulation values are likely not what they're supposed to be. Windows, seems to be some structural addition of a roof overhang out front with some posts that are just logs.
Yeah, well, I'm just wondering when these, as I said, changes to the requirements were made. I mean, were they in place when it was built? Because
Yeah, that it was only approved as an accessory building, so the setbacks are much different than for a dwelling. So that's the other thing, you would require more variances. The infrastructure requirements is something that the infrastructure department would have to comment on, but there were some, substantial fees associated with this. So I agree, it's going to be quite costly and complicated to approve this building as a dwelling. The other option was to join it to the existing home, but again, there's still setbacks that don't
it's not
comply.
possible.
Yeah, so it is challenging for sure, but I guess the The fact is that it isn't a dwelling and wasn't supposed to be there. That's why the setbacks are what they are.
There is another shed there that, well, I guess it's not being confused with the carriage house, but, okay.
So those are the options to bring it up to conformance. And I mean, the option we're looking at today is to put the notice of title on it,
Yeah.
where, I mean, it would essentially stay the same and be non-conforming, but there would be a notice on title for
Yeah, I understand.
future, yeah.
So when we
future
go to sell
purchases.
it,
So,
then we're,
And those,
reduces from the property value quite substantially.
and those purchasers would know that it's,
Yeah.
yeah.
I mean, alternatively, if when you go to sell or at any time, you could bring it into compliance, just not as a dwelling. There's a couple things that we had a basic building permit to address the roof overhang, and I understand.
Pretty fancy storage shed.
Yeah,
Yeah.
or an accessory building, right? But it just not as a dwelling. So we could help you with that. We could bring it into compliance just as what it was. It's just there have been some alterations, so we just get a basic
All
building
right,
permit.
well, I
for that.
appreciate that. Yeah, thanks, Jason.
Okay, I'm just gonna go to council here. Any questions, comments? Motions? Just wait, there is a recommendation. And that's that the corporate officer be authorized to file a section 57 community charter notice at the land title office against the title of land described as Lot 6, Block 29, Plan VAP 4856, District Lot 685, PID 011-290-994, and known as 346 Headlands Road. Do we have a mover? If there's, yeah, okay. I've got Councillor DeAndrade and seconded by Councillor Thompson. Any discussion of the motion? All those in favor? The motion carries. So thanks for joining us, Casey, and having, it was good to hear your side of it.
May I ask a question? It's not regarding this particular case, but in general.
On these.
On this issue,
Yeah,
yeah.
notices on title, sure.
Well, I'm just trying to understand, I mean, technically, a person who buys the house should know all of this, but is there anything that the town can do in terms of giving them an advice when they come here or?
Yes, put on a notice on title.
No, I know, but the ones that we don't know, I don't know, or I'm just trying to prevent, because I understand it's an unfortunate case, right? Unfortunately, many people don't know, and you don't have necessarily realtors that would disclose all the details. So
Okay,
if
go
there's
ahead.
any way to support that.
Through the mayor, the best thing to do if you're going to buy a property is to call the town of Gibsons and ask, was this built with a permit? It's a simple question. We get it quite a few times from realtors, not always, and the answer to that question can let them know what has been formally approved by the town. Because often there are secondary suites, there are garden suites, there are dwelling units that are not approved by the town. And when we get complaints, that's what triggers the enforcement. But yeah, we do respond to realtor inquiries every day.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I think, it's unfortunately, I could see perhaps a listing realtor kind of glossing over something like this and not being totally transparent. But when you got the buying realtor, the realtor representing you, not doing that due diligence, that's really unfortunate. Yeah, I mean, that's what a realtor should be doing for you when they're representing you. I've got a couple hands up. I think I saw Councillor Thompson. Yeah.
I was just going to say to that point, I think, don't quote me, but I was just reading in, I believe it was the Coast Reporter, of changes to the real estate responsibility code that does make real estate agents responsible for the way they outlay what a property is offering. So I think that is changing, actually. of late, because somebody did just get in trouble for that, actually.
Yeah, that's good. Councillor Kroll.
Thank you, Mayor White. And sort of in line with what Councillor Thompson was saying and what I said to Casey every time I got accosted at the mall, you know, his change of use triggered suddenly the eyes were on the property. But I would suspect that any responsible realtor saying, hey, you've got a mortgage helper, which is a long-term tenant because you can't use short-term rental income as a mortgage helper. It's not recognized by banks. So to say you've got a mortgage helper, I would suspect that a responsible realtor would have recognized what is an appropriate dwelling. They obviously, in listing the property, would have looked at the buildings on the property and what, So, I feel, it's been unfortunate because had there been a notice on title on this property in the first place, Casey and his wife would not be going through the grief and anguish. I know staff and bylaw have worked with them extensively, and it's been, a long, ongoing, exasperating process, I think, for everyone involved. To my recollection, since I've been sitting on council, this is only the second notice on title that we've placed. The previous one was a waterfront property on Marine Drive, and there was protest at the time of us putting a notice on title. Oh dear, the people are going to have trouble selling it. That's the point of a notice on title. It's, and I think it's really important that if we're extending the opportunity for people in the community to operate a short-term guest accommodation or even rental accommodation, that it's safe, that it's compliant. And, I can only applaud our building department for, suggesting this. And, in future, I'd certainly support anything that they bring to our attention because it's only going to save people continued grief down the road.
Thank you, Councillor Kroll. I want to address a couple things of what you said. One is I think we've had two during this council. The other one was Gibsons Way. And then you're talking about one on the previous council, and then I think there was one that wasn't one that was denied to a notice on title. It was considered, but I do feel I don't completely agree with the Marine Drive example of being the notice on title is going to make this. The whole point is to make it tough to sell because it sold. It did sell, so it didn't people still, somebody was willing to buy it and then upgrade it and get it into conformance by my knowledge, because that's a good news story. Somebody was able to buy it, and maybe the price was reduced a bit, which would have helped them to buy it. And then the new buyers brought it into conformance, as far as I know. So that's a good news story, I think, of how this process should work. Councillor Kroll.
Just for clarification, the protest comment that was made at the time was that it was going to impede the vendor from selling. To your point, it actually did sell. And the purchaser was aware of the shortcomings of that property. So it's perhaps there was a reduction in price, but at least someone walked into something with their eyes wide open.
So I think we can move on to 6.2, Director of Corporate and Legislative Services. This is just a recommendation. I don't think there's any report. This is just a recommendation straight from the Accessibility Committee that we need to put forward here. Moved by Councillor DeAndrade, seconded by Councillor Kroll. Discussion. All those in favor? The motion carries. And page 37, item 6.3, this is a short-term rental enforcement fund, which is an opportunity for funding. It just came up. So I think it's pretty straightforward that we should definitely send in an application for it. I've got a motion first, so moved by Councillor Kroll, second by Councillor Thompson. In discussion, go ahead, Councillor.
Thank you, Mayor. Oh, no, it just occurred to me because of the amount, if it's worth it. I remember there was this conversation, the Director of Finance mentioned that, and other directors have mentioned, right, how much time is spent in grants. So I was just trying to get a perspective. Is it really worth it?
Staff has determined that it's worth it, which is why they're recommending. I mean, but maybe you can elaborate on why it's worth it?
Through the mayor, the eligibility criteria for this grant is quite wide open, so we could allocate it for existing staffing. So we could, they're asking for a minimum of 100,000 per year. So if granted, the minimum would be 300,000 for this grant, and it covers staff time, it covers technology, a software. We could improve our business licensing program. There's a lot of things that we could do to improve our efficiencies and work that would be for short-term rentals, but it could also benefit the organization. So it is short notice. It's due on Friday. The Director of Finance and I have talked about what we could put into this application, but we wanted to get your endorsement before we do it.
Okay, any more questions, discussion? All those in favor? The motion carries. On to council reports. Melissa has submitted a report here, and Councillor Kroll's got a report, lengthy report of activities going back to July, which is similar to the last one I did. Well, I just did that. I think our last meeting I had an epic report that was months long. Does anyone have any questions on the reports? Oh yeah, Councillor Thompson.
I just wanted to thank Melissa, well, and David too, but Melissa, there's so many inspiring events that are happening that you're all engaged in. It was just great to read that and hear about some of those things. So well done.
Thanks, Melissa, for keeping us up to date.
Thank you, Mayor. We have a new principal that came into, I guess, power this year, and she's super involved and she just loves organizing events, and she supports us totally, so makes it really easy for us students too.
Yeah, we found that too when we were working on getting the alternate submissions for the alternate representative. The school was really responsive, and the vice principal was a big part of that. And I understand the vice principal's been part of this absenteeism campaign that's going on too, which you mentioned. Yeah. And that's so. And when you say that the absences and lates have been at an all-time low since the new policy, that's just been in a short period, right?
It's been not even 2 weeks.
Yeah. So there's been a good response so far. Great. This has been I think it was found that there were concerning amount of absences.
Yeah.
Do you remember the number?
I think it was over 50% of my grade.
Over 50% of classes, or over 50% of people were considered to have too many absences. Oh, Andrew knows.
So I believe the Ministry of Education defines chronic absenteeism as missing 10% of classes.
Right.
I think it was the grade 10s was over 70%, I believe, which is very shocking. I'm pleased to report that Melissa and I, the grade 12s, I believe we were one of the lowest as with the thing, but I don't know what the new numbers are now.
I'm not too sure. He hasn't
I do
disclosed
believe it
it.
does have an effect, but yeah, it was a significant problem, and I do believe it is being worked on.
Yeah, so this is a big deal. It's good to hear the positive response. Yeah, Councillor Kroll.
Thank you, Mayor White. I'm assuming it's still the case today that educational financing is based on attendance?
Nope.
Not anymore?
Nope.
Okay, when I was going to school, if you were absent, it was recorded and the statistics were reported to the ministry, and the school budget was deducted based on the percentage of attendance, and it was canceled by the amount of absence.
Yeah, so I can say with absolute certainty that's not not the case. Yeah, from my time at the school board, it wasn't that way. Wasn't that way in BC. Maybe that was an Ontario thing too, right? Yeah. Yeah, I know my daughter's been on an exchange for the whole semester, and I would still get calls about her being absent, so that might have been a reason. That might have been the school seemed to think that she was absent, so maybe she was bumping the numbers up. I don't know. I think they finally figured it out, but now she's going to be back soon. Oh yeah, so we've also got the community dialogue in here as our. I wanted this to be included in our consideration of council reports, and I see that our director of infrastructure isn't here, but it's an opportunity we could always kind of just take note of some of the issues that came up to ask staff to explore a little more. I did kind of go over here with a highlighter that if we have any follow-up questions on some of these questions. I think we know staff's position on a few of them, like the dog park, the consideration of additional play areas. These are the beach access. These are all things that would be considered in the parks plan. The Parks Master Plan that is hopefully coming in 2026, which you talked about at the time. That would probably, I imagine the trails, if there's any like room for trail improvement, would that be something, that's probably something in the Parks Plan as well. I'll look to our CAO on that.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, we are paying attention to these to this feedback, and you will. It's already either included in the budget submission in the next few weeks, or we'll make the next round opinion what it is.
Great. Councillor DeAndrade?
It's just a comment. I feel concerned because, in the past 6 years sitting here, there's so much request for a dog park, and now the people still have to wait almost 2 years. So it's not that the town is big enough, and I don't think we have too many choices. So I wonder, why do we need to wait for a full plan to be completed? And we cannot just look at the map and say, there are probably 2 or 3 places. So just concerning.
Well, it is something that I think our CAO just said that could be considered. Expediting that is something that staff could look at. Currently that's where it is, but our Director of Finance would like to speak on that too.
Yes, Mayor White, as part of that follow-up the CAO referenced, and in light of the donation policy, one of the staff responses coming back on some of these items was where a community partnership made sense between a local group and the town. If it's possible, as in some other communities, that a place could be identified and the group could actually raise the money and construct the park if they're in a rush and they've waited long enough, as an option for council to consider, if there were such a group. Thank you.
That came up 2 dialogues ago. Somebody came up and said, our group would like to donate money to do this, and then we never heard from them again. So that's hence one of the reasons why it hasn't really moved forward. But hopefully we will hear from them eventually, because now we've got an opportunity for them to pursue it.
Yes, Mayor White, and that's a great example of what happens with advocates towards these things. We've seen with other local governments, ice arenas being constructed, skate parks being constructed, and so on by keen groups who demonstrate to council they have the capacity to run a project. And there are opportunities for them to raise funds that local government on its own can't. And if they're willing to do that with a little help and advice from the town, they can actually get somewhere they want to go. But if they're not willing to, then they'll have to wait until the town gets to it.
And there's a long tradition of that in the town. There's a lot of great projects here that have happened because of, I see you, Councillor DeAndrade. A lot of great projects have happened because of donations. And one is the band shell, which is mentioned in here as well. And that's, you know, that's kind of the opposite problem where here a great contribution was made to the community. And now it's our asset management issue where it's like we need to maintain it and replace it. And again, we've got no real means, obvious place in our budget to do so. So hopefully that's somewhere where the community, I mean, with this new policy, we can encourage community to come forward and get together like we've done in the past to make these things happen. Councillor Andretti.
Thank you, Mayor. Now is my request as a director of the SCRD, if you can ask them to fence the park, the dog park, because I don't know who really uses the park, because a big dog or a small dog, they would all escape. And right at the forest, I mean, unless it's a very well trained, so let's be honest, most dogs won't. Maybe
I don't know.
you do.
I assume I'm not a dog owner. Are you?
I know.
I would assume the opposite personally. I pointed to
Okay,
Christy because Christy's a dog owner, but
My dog
like
will
most,
run into the mouths of a wolf. So
Yeah.
it would.
yeah, but not necessarily all dogs. I don't know. Like I wouldn't. Yeah.
But the question is, do you think, do you feel any appetite to lobby for, just a request, if it's possible, they fence the
Well, let's
park?
send them a letter. Yeah. I don't know.
Okay, I support that.
Yeah. No, I'll tell you one day what they did with our last letter. It wasn't very friendly. But Councillor Kroll.
Thank you, Mayor White. You know, I'm not a dog walker. Well, I am a dog walker these days. I've been walking dogs for other people. But the Shirley Macy Park really isn't ideal. It's, as Councillor Andretti said, it's open to the forest behind. The fence is such that a small dog such as Rooster could shoot right under the fence and be out on Chamberlain Road. And, you know, if we have any inclement weather, it's a swamp. So, you know, calling it a proper dog park is a bit of a misnomer. You know, it's a token gesture towards dog park, but I wouldn't call it that.
Two requests.
Far be it from me to be defensive on this, but I've heard people actually go there quite a lot, and like some people, right? It works for some people and their dogs. Like, yeah, the dog that's going to run into the trails, not so much, but a dog that will stay near its owner and maybe likes to be walked into the trails. Like, I assume that's why the trails are open. Like, I think it's good for some people, but not all dog owners is my take on it, because I've heard positive feedback about it too. I've heard more negative feedback, but it's just there's different opinions on it. Yeah. I did want to touch on waterfront beautification just to make sure, because that was touched on just somewhat by because it's also come to me even before this that just somebody raised the fact that, like, we have our lighting, and I brought this up with our CAO, but I must have been 10 years ago or so. I think there used to be lights down there in the Seawalk in front of Wine Garden, and they would get kicked out, and they were all turned off, and they've just, but unfortunately, like, some of them have wiring sticking out and stuff too. It's like, it's partly just the aesthetics of it. There's former lights there. It could really be cleaned up. It's kind of walking along and seeing wires sticking out of the Seawalk is concerning for some people. I've got that feedback back, and I was asked by someone, are those live wires? Yeah, I wasn't going to say try, but yeah, I assured them they weren't. But it obviously crosses people's minds that they might be when they're walking, which is concerning. So I wonder about cleaning that up a bit, and that was brought up about the development of the Shell lands there too, where there's been some it wasn't completely repaved, and maybe a plan for lighting for the whole Seawalk, but that would tie into some developments like, could we kind of get it kicked off a standard for the public land that would tie into the harbor and also the foreshore improvements on the other side? I'll just ask our CAO.
If I may, Mr. Mayor, and play engineer since the director of engineering is not here. The lighting, it's been along the seawalk, it's been a bit frustrating over the years. We've had different issues, and there isn't sort of a uniform lighting project for the whole seawalk. And when we're talking about, if we start from Armour's Beach over to the Marino, even including headlands, because we're seeing a lot more activity on headlands and that area of the bay per se. We on the existing infrastructure, the town has some primarily in front of Weingarten Park, and that's the one that has been tried a few times over the years, and it's become a bit of a sport to burn it down. And we've tried different forms embedded in the wall. It's short ones with a tall street light style, and all of those got ripped out or damaged, unfortunately. And on that note, there likely are some wires in there. There's nothing connected, but we'll double check on that to make sure that that's the case. The ones that front properties that are planning to develop, those projects include on their frontage some lighting consideration for the walkways that would go in front of them. So it's sort of a little bit less work on us, but I think it would be helpful to get, and if I may make a suggestion for council to consider some direction to us in a resolution that we prepare a lighting plan for the harbor walk, and that would give us a bit more time to get a sense of where to prioritize. And duly noted that on the development side, we can have more clear direction, even what style should we pick and so on. So with your, that would be our suggestion for
the timing is good too, because then it could establish a standard for any developments down there to follow. Yeah, okay. See, two hands up there. Councillor Kroll, Councillor DeAndretti, is that to move that recommendation?
I move, but I will, okay.
Okay. Councillor DeAndretti will move it. Councillor Kroll seconds. Did we get that? Did we get the wording for that down? Okay.
May I make a suggestion on the wording too?
Okay.
I think what is important is that be some sort of gentle light as well, because first of the seawall, you can have impacts on marine life, right? Whether it's microlife, plankton or whatever. But also, these LED lights, they can be so invasive and ugly, the color. So I would like to give attention not only on the but some care with the type of lights as well that fit the atmosphere, that still brings light, you can see, but not as invasive.
Okay, well,
Thank you.
That can be considered, but
yeah, most certainly there's dark sky friendly standards would be important. Yeah. Maintenance and the quality of the light as well. So duly noted.
So I think I want to get back to, so that we want to direct staff to consider a lighting plan for the seawalk, right? Yes. Okay, so that's the motion that's been moved and seconded. Any discussion on that?
Yeah. No.
And they're going to take your comments.
Yeah, there's ecologically friendly. Yeah.
All in favor? The motion carries. Speaking of the harbor, I just want to comment to council too. There was a comment here about increasing moorage spaces, and I responded about the recreational water lease and things. So on Saturday, the Harbor Authority is having their strategic planning session for their board, and I'll be there as a liaison. And they've invited Manny to come in and make a presentation. So they're really positive about working with the town, and then we are scheduled to have, or I don't know if a date's scheduled, but we're supposed to have a special board to council meeting after they do their strategic planning soon, probably in the next month. So that's going to be an opportunity to talk about harbor expansion and these kinds of concepts that were brought up at our budget priorities meeting. Any other comments or questions about that document? Okay. So we're on to next meeting. Wait, is this on?
Yeah, I find a little bit surprising this comment, the need for additional play areas for children in Gibsons. And I wonder, how much do we know about the need?
Well,
They will come on the OCP, do you think?
I've asked that. I've asked
okay.
that too, because sometimes it just kind of comes up here and there, like, oh, we need a playground. Sometimes not from parents. We need a playground here. We need a playground there, and I think we need to do a better comprehensive study, which is what the Parks Master Plan will do. Yeah, which is on our it's on the work plan over a couple years. Like I think we're doing the transportation management plan is the plan for this year. It's going to come forward in the budget probably as something we consider. And
Yes,
Yeah.
Mayor, the Transportation Master Plan.
yeah,
And then Parks 2026.
transportation master plan, and then we're looking tentatively at like Parks Master Plan will be next year. Councillor Cole, did you have something on that or?
No.
Okay. Next meeting, next regular meeting of council is February 4th, 2025 at 3:30 p.m. Motion to adjourn, moved by Councillor Kroll, seconded by Councillor Thompson. All those in favor, the motion carries.